You didn't lose your edge. You just redirected it somewhere safer. You built companies, signed contracts that scared other men, carried risks most people would collapse under. But when it comes to your body, you suddenly became reasonable. You don't say you want abs. You say you're training for something, a marathon, an Ironman, 75 hard, something public, something respectable, something that explains why your stomach still hangs over your belt. And every time you lace up your shoes, there's a quiet thought you don't say out loud. At least no one can call me lazy. At least no one can say I'm lazy. Another one follows it. If I fail, I still look disciplined. And the one you avoid most, if I went after the body I actually want, there would be nowhere to hide. So you run, not toward a goal, away from a standard, because a marathon gives you applause. A six-pack gives you silence, and silence tells the truth. What are you really running from? Welcome back to Iron Suits, where strength wears the crown. I am your host, Marwan Killu. Today, we're pulling apart the psychology of why high-achieving men chase endurance trophies instead of the physique they secretly want, and why needing to be healthy has become the most socially acceptable way to stay mediocre. You're the CEO, you built something from nothing, you made the hard calls, fired people, bet the house on yourself. You got the portfolio, the reputation, the respect. But you won't admit you want a six-pack. Instead, you sign up for a marathon, an Ironman, 75 hard. You post training pictures, rocking, going out in 3 feet of snow, walking because you have to do your second workout. You post a checklist, all right? You collect the finisher medals. You frame the race bibs. Yet your gut still hangs over your belt. What are you running from? Today we're going deep into the psychology of why high-achieving business owners chase participation trophies instead of the body they actually want. And more importantly, how focusing on what you want instead of what you need is the only way out of this trap. So let's start here. Needs are survival. Wants are ambition. You need to not be obese. You need to avoid a heart attack. You need to fit in your clothes. That's basement level thinking. That's playing defense with your health. But a six-pack, that's offense. That's declaring war on mediocrity. That's saying, I don't just want to survive. I want to dominate. Napoleon Hill wrote in Think and Grow Rich, I believe it was, about the difference between wishing and burning desire. A wish is passive, desire is active, relentless consuming. When you focus on what you need, you're wishing. When you go after what you want, you tap into that burning desire. Needs keep you stuck in obligation. Wants pull you towards possibility. Needs keep you alive. Wants decide who you become. The average person focuses on needs because it's safe. It's justifiable. Nobody judges you for just trying to be healthy. But when you declare you want a six-pack, now you're exposed. Now there's a standard. Now there's a scorecard. And that terrifies you. Here's a part nobody wants to admit, including you. So what do? You sign up for a marathon. Not because you give a shit about running 26.2 miles? Not because you dream about crossing the finish lines, but because it looks impressive. It's a socially acceptable ambition, okay? You're not ambitious, you're just hiding in plain sight. Here's a silent conversation running in your head. If I train for an Ironman, nobody can say I'm not disciplined. If I do 75 hard, I can prove I'm committed. If I fail, well, at least I tried something hard. You're creating a narrative cover. That's not discipline. That's reputation management. Let's talk about 75 hard. Not the rules, not the workouts, not whether it works. Let's talk about why it feels right for you. Or it feels right to you. Okay? Because 75 hard isn't attractive because it's hard. It's attractive because it's binary. You either pass or you fail. You either comply or you don't. And that matters because it removes the most uncomfortable possibility of all, defining your own standards. In business, you set the bar. In your body, you quietly stopped. So you borrow one. When you follow a rigid program like 75 hard, you're not building discipline, you are outsourcing authority. When you follow a rigid program like 75 hard, you are not building discipline. You are outsourcing authority. You don't have to decide what elite looks like, what's enough, or when you're falling short. The program decides for you. That's comforting. Here's a part that nobody says out loud. 75 hard lets you suffer publicly whilst avoiding precision privately. You can post the workouts, the cold showers, the checklists. Pain is visible, precision isn't. No one sees calorie restraint. No one applauds consistency without drama. No one comments on boring excellence. So you choose suffering that can be seen. And here's the real payoff. The one you won't admit. Failure is insured. If you fail 75 hard, the story is, it was extreme. Life got busy. It wasn't realistic long term. It wasn't sustainable. Right? The failure attacks logistics, not character. But if you say, I want to get lean, I want a visible six-packs, I want breaks for abs, and you don't get it, that failure has nowhere to hide. that failure says something about you, this is the moment. This is where most men feel the tightness in their chest, the urge to argue, the need to explain. Because you know exactly which failure you've been protecting yourself from. And there's another layer beneath that, deeper and more uncomfortable. Endurance challenges earn respect. Physique earns desire. Respect keeps you safe. Desire exposes you. Desire invites judgment, comparison, silence. So say in arenas where effort is celebrated and outcomes are negotiable. That's not masculinity under pressure. That's masculinity with an escape hatch. Understand this. 75 hard doesn't threaten your identity. It protects it. It lets you feel disciplined without being measured, committed without being revealed, serious without being aligned. And as long as you keep choosing the structured suffering over personal standards, you'll stay busy, respected, and quietly dissatisfied. Tim Grover talks about this in Relentless. The difference between coolers, closers, and cleaners. Coolers are content with good enough. Closers want to win, but only when conditions are right. Cleaners, they want what they want, and they don't apologize for it. Mamba, Jordan, those guys were cleaners. Most business owners are coolers in the gym, masquerading as closers. They want results, but only if they can hedge their bets. Only if there's a backup story. If your business operated the way your body does, you'd fire yourself. Here's what you won't admit. Endurance gives you applause. A six-pack gives you silence and truth. So let's go deeper. Why are you really scared to admit that you want a six-pack? Fear of vanity judgment, the whole truth. You want to take your shirt off at the pool and have people notice. You want to look in the mirror and feel proud. You want your spouse to be attracted to you again. There's nothing wrong with that. But you've been conditioned to believe it's wrong, so you hide it. You're lying, and everybody knows it, including you. Neville Goddard taught that assumptions create reality, that you must assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. In other words, you got to live in the end, okay? As though the thing that you've had you've already had the thing. So you want a G-Wagon, you got to live in the future, sort of in the end. You driving the G-Wagon, okay? You got to be the guy with a six-pack before you can have the six-pack. But you can't assume what you won't admit you want. When you secretly want a six-pack, but publicly train for marathons, you create something that's called a cognitive dissonance. You're working towards a goal you won't claim. Self-protection isn't just self-sabotage with a better... Let's start again. Self-protection is just self-sabotage with a better PR. Because here's the truth. If you can't admit what you want, you'll never get it. You built an identity as someone who conquers challenges, someone who sets audacious goals and hits them. Your business proves this. But your body, that's the one area where you've accepted less than excellence. And it gnaws at you. Here's what this says about the man you're becoming. You're willing to tolerate a double standard. Excellence in public, mediocrity in private. I'll fix it later, after this quarter, after this race, and later keeps moving. So you sign up for extreme endurance events because they feel like conquest without requiring you to face the thing you've actually been avoiding. And that's admitting that you want to be shredded and doing the simple and glamorous work to get there. You'd rather suffer through 140.6 miles of an Ironman than face 12 weeks of constant calorie tracking and progressive overload training. Why? You're not training hard. You're training around the problem. Effort isn't impressive when it's aimed sideways. This isn't about someday. This is about tonight. What you eat, what you skip, what you justify. At some point you have to face this. The man you are in meetings and the man you are in the mirror are no longer the same person. One of them is lying. At some point, it stops being psychology and starts being a choice. You already know the truth. You're just hoping discipline will save you from admitting it. Well, I'm calling it out. Every marathon registration is you saying, I'll do anything except the one thing I actually want. Every finisher medal is a trophy for almost trying. Let's call it what it is. They aren't endurance achievements. They are adult participation trophies. You didn't win anything. You didn't dominate anything. You completed a process designed so everyone who survives gets applause. Every race photo is proof you showed up to their own competition. Good. Now what are you going to do about it? So here's what you're going to do. Embrace what you want. So number one, you got to own your desire. Okay? You got to say it out loud. This is what they call it. Tony Robbins calls it incantations, right? Affirmations, incantations, same thing. Say it out loud. I want a six-pack, right? Not I want to be healthy. Not I want to be fit. Okay, these are vanilla goals. Okay, these are vague goals. Your brain can't go to work on something unless you're ultra specific. When you went to work in your business, you didn't just say, oh yeah, I just want to have my own business. Okay, I want to have my own business and what? You didn't specify how many, you had the target in mind of what you wanted to drive, what life you wanted to live. Right? You wanted to have a certain wife, certain look, how they call it, a certain look. You want your wife to look like something. Okay, whether it's like a certain specification, whether short, tall, whatever. We're not going to go into the specifics, right? But you got to say it with emotion. It's no good saying, I want a six-pack. Your brain is like, yeah, okay, whatever. Right? You got to say it with emotion and like say it really out loud with conviction. Right? So not I want to be healthy, not I want to be fit. I want a six pack. Right? So feel the resistance when you say, I want a six pack. Okay? And I'm not going to stop until I get there. Other than I want a six pack. Boring. Hey? When you're like, or I want a six pack. And you're almost like afraid to say it, right? The resistance, if you read like that, it's called resistance. It's ego protection. It's fear of judgment. And that's a part of you you'd rather say, right? You'd rather stay safe than get what you want. Okay, that's a part of you. So you got to kill it. You got to own what you want. When you own what you want, without apology, you take back control. You stop performing for external validation and start pursuing internal fulfillment. Number 2 is raise your standards. Raise your standards. As Tony Robbins, you probably heard Tony Robbins talk about raising your standards. Going after what you want, not just what you need, forces you to elevate everything, right? You can't get a six pack with your current habits. You can't get a six pack with your current discipline. You can't get a six pack with your current excuses. Pursuing what you want demands more from you. It requires you to become someone different, someone better. That's why most people never do it. Number 3, accept the scorecard. Here's the deal. When you start chasing participation trophies, you control the narrative. Participation trophies exist where standards are negotiable. Scoreboards exist when the truth is unavoidable. When you chase what you actually want, the results speak for themselves. Either you have a six pack or you don't. There's no hiding, no spin, no finisher medal for effort. And that's exactly why you should do it. Because the willingness to be measured, truly measured, is what separates high achievers from people who just look busy. Number 4, you got to focus on desire, not obligation. Needs are draining. They're about avoiding pain. Wants are energizing. They're about pursuing pleasure and fulfillment. I spoke about this in the previous episode. Okay, go back and listen to the episodes in the series that I spoke about. And why is it the one? Was it why needs keep? I think the previous episode. Why needs keep you? What was it? Let me have a look. Why? Where's it going? Yeah, why needs make you stop. That's the one. Why needs make you stop. I spoke about that. If you go back and listen to that episode, because I talk about why you get stuck and you on the 20, 30, 40 pounds. Okay, when you lose 20, 30 pounds and then you gain it again. I'll talk all about that. And it's not what it's not what you think at all. It's completely different than what you've been taught. Okay, so you need to go back and listen to that, and then this episode will make sense. As the desire episode will make sense as well. Okay, when it comes out. It's going to come out on, that's going to be out before this one. Okay, so ones are energizing because they're about pursuing pleasure and fulfillment. When you shift from I need to lose weight to I want to be shredded or I want to look like a savage, everything changes. You're no longer grinding out of obligation. You're building out of desire, that's sustainable, that's powerful. That's what creates long-term transformation. Look, I get it. You've conquered mountains in business. You've taken risks most people never take. You bet on yourself on one. But somewhere along the way, you've learned to play it safe with your body. You've learned to chase goals that look impressive instead of pursuing what you actually want. The marathon medals are collecting dust. There's 75 hard challenges over. And you still don't have the body that you fucking want. So here's my challenge to you. Stop running away from what you want. Stop hiding behind participation trophies. Stop pretending you don't care about abs when you think about them every time you see yourself in the mirror. You're a high achiever. Act like it. Admit what you want. Raise your standards to match it. Embrace the scoreboard. And go after it with the same relentless intensity you bring to your business. Because here's the truth. The moment you stop chasing what you think you should want and start pursuing what you actually want, that's when everything changes. That's when you stop settling for needs and start claiming your wants. That's when you stop being average and start becoming exceptional. Applause fades, identity doesn't. 5 years from now, nobody's going to ask about your marathon time. Nobody would give a shit how early you woke up for 75 hard. No one will remember the suffering you posted online. But you'll still wake up in the body you chose not to confront. Because endurance challenges don't demand standards. They demand compliance. They let you suffer without being measured. They reward effort without requiring precision. And that's why you choose them. That's why you chose them. Not because they were harder, because they were safer. Safer than admitting you want a body that commands respect. Safer than accepting a scoreboard you can't spin. Safer than facing the fact that discipline isn't the issue. Honesty is. So understand this. Every time you pick a challenge that looks impressive instead of a goal that tells the truth, you're not building a character. You're protecting an identity that no longer holds up. This isn't about abs. It's about alignment. Right now, the man you are in public and the man you tolerate in private are negotiating. One of them is winning. That's all I have for you today. I hope this episode was helpful. If it was helpful, please share it with another leader. As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. That's how we grow the show. As you can see, we don't have any ads on the show. And I'm not planning to have any ads either. But however, as everybody keeps saying, never say never, 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 never. But 99.99999% that we're not going to have any ads on the show. Follow me on my socials. You can watch this you can watch this podcast on YouTube at youtube.com, Marwan Killu. Find me on Facebook, Marwan Killu. And I am on LinkedIn, Marwan Killu Fitness. Make sure to subscribe to get notifications when new episodes go live. And make sure you leave me a review on iTunes. Good or bad, I'd love to hear from you. Till next time. Talk to you. Have a good day, and I'll talk to you soon.